Most people think they're making decisions. Conscious decisions, logical decisions, thoughtful decisions. You decide what to say, what to buy, who to trust, what to avoid, what matters, what doesn't. At least, that's how it feels. But have you ever done something and immediately wondered why? Ever made a choice you couldn't fully explain? Ever repeated a habit you promised yourself you'd stop? Ever stayed in a situation that clearly wasn't working, then later found yourself inventing a reason for it? Here's the uncomfortable possibility. What if the decision happened before the explanation? What if your conscious mind isn't always the CEO of your life, but sometimes the press secretary, showing up after the fact to explain choices that have already been made? Psychologists estimate that the overwhelming majority of mental processing happens outside conscious awareness, not because your brain is trying to deceive you, because it has to. If you consciously processed every piece of information around you, you'd never get through the day, which means most of your mind operates in a place you rarely see. Think of it like a boardroom, a room full of processes constantly evaluating threats, opportunities, memories, habits, emotions, and predictions. You never attend most of those meetings. You only receive the final memo. Today, we're looking at some of the secrets your brain keeps, not because it's working against you, but because it's trying to help you survive. And sometimes, survival software creates problems that conscious awareness never sees coming. The first secret is that your brain often makes decisions before it explains them. Imagine a courtroom. A verdict has already been reached. The jury has already decided, but instead of announcing the result immediately, lawyers are asked to present evidence. That's surprisingly similar to how many decisions work. A feeling appears, a preference appears, a reaction appears, and only afterward does the conscious mind begin constructing a story around it. You've probably experienced this. You instantly like someone, or dislike them. Then spend the next 10 minutes explaining why. You buy something, then justify the purchase. You avoid a difficult conversation, then create a perfectly reasonable explanation for avoiding it. The explanation feels logical, and sometimes it is. But often, the logic arrives after the decision, which means a surprising amount of what we call reasoning is actually storytelling, not deciding, explaining. This doesn't make you irrational, it makes you human. The mistake is assuming your first explanation is always the real one. Sometimes it's simply the first one your brain could comfortably accept. The second secret is even stranger. Your brain is constantly editing reality, not maliciously, efficiently. Think about how much information is around you right now. Sounds, colors, sensations, memories, thoughts, patterns. Your brain cannot process all of it consciously, so it filters. It decides what matters, what doesn't, what gets attention, and what disappears completely. The problem is that those filters are heavily influenced by your existing beliefs, your current worldview, your existing mental models, your expectations. In other words, you aren't seeing reality exactly as it is. You're seeing a curated version, a personalized feed, one designed to keep your understanding of the world stable, comfortable, predictable. This connects directly to something we've talked about before: interference. Most people think interference is external, notifications, distractions, noise, but sometimes the biggest interference is internal, the brain protecting its current software, ignoring information that doesn't fit, downplaying evidence that creates discomfort, filtering out possibilities that threaten certainty. The strange part is that the more attached we become to a belief, the harder it becomes to notice the information we're no longer seeing. The third secret explains one of the most frustrating questions people ask themselves. Why do I keep doing this? You know the behavior isn't helping. You know it creates problems. You know you want to stop. And yet somehow you keep returning to it. At first glance, it makes no sense, but from the brain's perspective, it usually makes perfect sense because almost every recurring behavior provides a reward, even the destructive ones. The reward just isn't always obvious. Maybe procrastination protects you from failure. Maybe overworking protects you from feeling inadequate. Maybe people-pleasing protects you from rejection. Maybe staying stuck protects you from uncertainty. The conscious mind focuses on the cost. The subconscious focuses on the reward. And until that reward becomes visible, the behavior often stays in place. Which is why a better question isn't, why am I doing this? It's, what benefit does my brain believe it's receiving from this? The answer is often uncomfortable, but it's usually revealing, because hidden underneath many frustrating habits is an attempt to create safety, not success, safety, and those are not always the same thing. So how do you start uncovering these hidden processes? The first tool is something I call the why audit. The next time you make an important choice, ask yourself why. Then ask again and again. Most people stop at the first answer, some make it to the second. But by the third or fourth layer, something interesting starts happening. The socially acceptable answers begin disappearing, and the real motivations start showing up. The second tool is external mirroring, because there are patterns you can see in other people instantly, and patterns you can miss in yourself for years. That's why journaling helps. That's why trusted friends help. That's why honest feedback matters. Sometimes another perspective reveals the thing your own brain has been carefully editing out. The third tool is radical observation, a concept we discussed in the Rewiring Project. Pay attention to the gap, that brief moment between an urge and an action, the moment before you check the phone, the moment before you defend yourself, the moment before you avoid the task. The goal isn't to stop the behavior immediately. The goal is to notice it. Because awareness often arrives before change, and most automatic patterns lose power once they become visible. Here's the truth. Your brain isn't keeping secrets because it wants to hurt you. It's keeping secrets because it's trying to protect you. It's simplifying reality, reducing complexity, conserving energy, helping you survive. The problem is that survival and growth are not always the same thing. The strategies that keep you safe today may be limiting who you become tomorrow, which means if you want to do more than survive, you have to become curious about the things your mind would rather ignore. The pauses, the patterns, the contradictions, the uncomfortable explanations, the silence, because hidden inside that silence is often the information that changes everything. So let me ask you something. What's one habit, decision, or pattern in your life that feels completely illogical when you really look at it? Drop it in the comments, and let's see if we can decode the secret your brain might be protecting. The hardware is processing more than you know. Now it's time to audit the software, and I'll see you in the next video.